resume the recording here. And as always, just to remind you, when you come in, we're going to have the chat running, and I'll be watching the chat as we are having this presentation. So feel free to enable the chat. When you do the chat, make sure that you are always saying, let's say, I'm going to say hi here for you. All panelists and attendees. Make sure you have selected all panelists and attendees. That way, it's not only the message is not only going to Ashley and myself, but also everybody else can see what you are putting in the chat. So there you go. This Ann is leading the charge and letting us know. Hi, everyone. Good. So yeah, exactly that's what we want to happen. And also then there's a participant panel where you can see the participants if you want to see that. But in your case, the chat is really where everything is going to land. And today we're doing our second event of Employee Learning Week. We are ATDCFL. I'm your host, Alex Salas, your president, and we have 284 members. If you look back there, we're 284 guys. We started on dwindling numbers of 200. I think it was only 200 at the beginning of the year. So we're growing very strong. We're growing at a rapid pace. And it's because of all the great things that we're doing, your support, and awesome people like Ashley, who's helping us again here. She's a double dipper. It's the second time she's coming up with us. So much love there. And she's going to be here. You're going to be here for LSCon, right?
I will be. I had to think about
There
that
you
for
go.
a moment.
So Learning Solutions, guys, happens in March, March 31st to April 2nd, and she is going to be here doing presentations as well. So hopefully, I'm working my magic to see if I can get her to come early or do something. So we'll see. Maybe you want to let her know in the chat you want to see her. So let me go ahead and share my screen and give you just a quick intro here, and we get started. It's 11:02, and one of the main things I wanted to cover with you is we have events, as you know, it is Employee Learning Week, and Employee Learning Week is this thing that ATD celebrates every year, and it's to let you know, to make us aware of the great things we do. You can come here to our homepage, click on that, and get exactly an idea of what it is and what you can do on your own terms to participate in Employee Learning Week. However, we participate as a chapter, and we are doing the best thing we do, which is bringing you great speakers and great events. And we have, yesterday we had the Learning Clinic. Today we have Ashley again. She was amazing the first time we had her, and unfortunately for problems that we had, we didn't record it, but this one is getting recorded. So you're going to get that as well. And she's been awesome to come back for us as well. And then on Friday morning, we have Learning Experience Design, the creator of Learning Experience Design as a concept, Niels Floor from Netherlands. So that's why we're doing this one early in the morning, 8 o'clock in the morning. So yeah, exciting stuff, guys. And you can also, by the way, take advantage of our special promotion rate. There was an email that went out today and went out earlier, where we're going to increase our membership rates starting January 1st. It's going to $65 a year, but you can actually extend today for 2 years, this week, for 2 years for only $60. So that'll be $30 a year. So a special thing because you are a member and you are currently with us. And there's better things we're bringing for you. So I'll stop the share on that. We got the awesome Ashley there with us, and I think I don't have to introduce too much of who she is. She's an amazing instructional designer. She has, she also works in the corporate world. She works in different areas. She speaks regularly at many conferences, at major conferences like Learning Solutions, DevLearn, and all of those. And she has a trove of storyline tutorials that just if you wanted to learn how to use storyline, you can just go to her site and go tutorial by tutorial, and she's teaching you all the great skills and tips and tricks and everything there. So it is my pleasure to have Ashley again. Ashley, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me back again. I didn't scare off the group the first time, so I'm very excited to be back here. Um, I'm Ashley Chiasson. Some of you may not know me. Today I'm going to be talking to you guys again about building your e-learning portfolio and why I think that's so important. So I'm hoping that by the end of this session, you'll all be kind of inspired and motivated to work on your own e-learning portfolios. Now, just bear with me. I'm going to stop my video and I'm going to share my screen with the slide deck. And let's see if we can get the slideshow going. Here we go. All right, so I am an accidental instructional designer turned instructional design and articulate software enthusiast. I'm based out of Halifax, Nova Scotia, up on the very east coast of Canada. I heard it was 42 degrees in Florida yesterday, and I was very jealous because it was 28 degrees here, and it's currently snowing. So I broke into the field of instructional design working for a company that did primarily military contracting. I spent 5 years developing a lot of really cool things for the Canadian defense sector. And while in that role, I obtained my Master's of Education, Post-Secondary Studies, and began working as a freelance instructional designer and e-learning developer. About 3 years into freelancing, I quit my corporate job. I began working for myself full-time. However, I had always wanted to work in the post-secondary education sector, which is shockingly a very tough industry to break into in these parts. And I say that because in Nova Scotia, our primary export from university are folks in education. So people who have their Bachelor of Education, we have a lot of teachers. So it's just very hard to find an instructional design role in a province full of teachers. There's a lot of competition. So when I was given the opportunity to work as an instructional designer at a local university, I grabbed that up. Since then, it's been a bit of a ride. I spent some time at the university. I then went to a local community college where I still work casually. I am a part-time faculty member at the university. I work full-time for a company called Treliant as their senior e-learning developer. And I still do a bit of freelancing. So to say it's a bit chaotic would be an understatement, but I really enjoy what I do, so I don't mind doing it. Now, before I drop some portfolio building information on you, I have a couple of questions. And Alex, I can't see the chat, so I'll get you to maybe pipe up and let me know like a rough percentage of people responding to these. So how many of you currently have an e-learning portfolio?
Oh, yes, actually. And if you click on more or you see below the chat icon, you should be able to see the chat panel. But we have some folks saying not yet.
Okay.
Tabitha tells us in progress. And EV Block says I do not.
Okay, great. I do, I think.
Yeah, I do. I think that you
Great.
do.
Progress. All right. So who here is interested in eventually changing jobs, changing roles, or moving into a freelance or contracting role? All of the above. Okay, fantastic. This is great news. And then the last question I had is, have you ever been asked by a prospective employer to provide a sample or share a portfolio?
Always, says Elizabeth. Not yet.
All right, so a little bit of a mixed bag on that one. So whether or not you could relate to any of these questions, the portfolios really are a cornerstone for every e-learning professional. And I'm about to tell you why I think that. Let's see. So in my opinion, there are three main reasons why having a portfolio is important. First, it highlights your capabilities, specifically when it comes to visual technologies. Second, it can act as a visual resume. So if any of you have ever worked with a subject matter expert, you've had them review your Word storyboard and they come back and say that they just can't visualize it. You know that the next phase is developing the content and the media, but the subject matter expert just can't get past the storyboard phase. This problem is a very similar one to the one that prospective clients encounter when they're trying to visualize how you and your abilities could work for them and their needs. So the third reason I think that a portfolio is important is because it can lead to an increase in job offers. Once prospective clients can see what you're capable of doing, their confidence in your abilities will increase, potentially leading to more job offers. So this is very, very important for any of you who are interested in becoming an independent contractor, because the increase in job offers means that you've got more money coming in. So once I began to build up my portfolio, which is still pretty sparse to be honest, I saw a dramatic increase in the amount of prospective clients that I had. The road to independent contractorship is paved with a whole lot of hustling, and you are never going to stop playing the salesperson. However, you will be able to reduce the amount of hustling you do and will likely enjoy the luxury of being able to choose who you want to do work with. Over the past several years, I have been able to focus on working with clients that I'm passionate about doing work with instead of just scooping up anything and everything to pay the bills. In my first year of contracting, I worked with over 20 clients, but for the past 3 years, I've worked with a maximum of 5 per year, and I make more money working with 5 than I did with 20 plus. All of that said, I would consider investing time in building my portfolio to be a direct correlation with an increase in my quality of work life and overall job satisfaction. So freelancing isn't always pretty. My first foray into freelancing held one goal exclusively of paying off my student debt. I had no focus aside from that. I hopped on freelancer.ca, which is a bid site, kind of like upwork.com now. And I took on some of the worst jobs ever. I will give you one example of my worst jobs. I bid on a transcription job that was going to be transcribing interviews for someone's PhD thesis. I ended up transcribing 40 hours of audio for $100. After paying off my student debt, I vowed off freelancing because I was better than that. Mind you, I took on jobs that weren't always a good fit for my skill set and which certainly did not engage me. I also hated feeling as though I wasn't of value. So after a year off, I began to think about how I could take my passion of instructional design and become a successful freelancer. This is when I became focused, realizing that freelancing didn't have to be synonymous with feeling undervalued. I could do what I love doing for clients who needed my expertise. So after coming to this realization, I began to build my portfolio out. Common challenges. So I understand that building your portfolio can be challenging. Maybe you're not legally allowed to share your work samples. Maybe you just don't have time. You might not know where to begin. And maybe you're an instructional designer and you don't think you have anything to share in a portfolio. My hope is to give you some ideas to help combat these challenges. So before you doubt what you can and cannot include in your portfolio, you really need to ask your clients or organization what you can and cannot share. Many times I will encounter individuals who are too afraid to ask for permission to include content in their personal portfolio. Some people are nervous that their organization may think that they're looking for another job, even when they aren't. Some people might assume that because they've signed a non-disclosure agreement, they're unable to ask. Some people might be unsure as to whether they even want to ask. So regardless of how you feel, asking is always a very easy first step in the portfolio building process, and it might save you some time. In my portfolio, there aren't a ton of work samples because I too am impacted by non-disclosure agreements. But the ones that are present there are there because I asked. You can also modify your requests so you can explain the different options for sharing a portfolio piece. Some organizations or clients will be fine with you sharing a full course or interaction, but in my experience, most are not okay with that. So what I recommend for those who seem to stonewall you at that point in the request is to ask whether you can share a screenshot and a description of what you did with the project, or you can ask if you could do a video screencast walkthrough of the project, and then you can demo the full course without really giving the course away for free. So in the example here, I had worked on a project for the Nova Scotian government, and I thought for sure, hands down, they are going to shoot down any request of putting their content in my portfolio. They're a government entity. I just thought for sure it was going to be a hard no. I asked, and they agreed to let me include some screenshots and a description. So even when you think that it's going to be a hard no, you really need to take the time to ask. And at this point, I think I'll just ask the chat. Does anyone else have any questions about asking for permission?
Feel free to unmute yourself, guys, or use the chat.
All right. Great.
No questions from Tammy?
Forge ahead.
I got a question for you.
Yeah, certainly.
So the asking for permission, when you work with clients and you're doing freelancing, let's say, do you perhaps have some strategies where like maybe include some kind of discount on your pricing to be able to show or share?
I never really gave that much thought because most of my clients were subcontracting me out.
Oh, okay.
So I was being subcontracted to do the work,
Gotcha.
which kind of limited them in being able to allow me to share
Right,
the work.
right.
And
Okay.
I was also working with a lot of government clients. So the government clients would love a discount, but they don't really want to agree to many other things.
I
So
see. That's good.
to answer your question, I did not explore that option, but that is an option. If you are working with clients that aren't subcontracting you, you could very well ask that and give them an offer, like kind of a publicity offer almost.
Yeah. Because I usually find out, afterwards, it's a little too late if if you wait to develop in the US. Hey, can we share?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, good.
So before taking the leap into full-time independent contractorship, I knew that I needed some sort of portfolio. I'd been freelancing part-time for a couple of years, and I was really getting tired of the "can we see your portfolio" question. At times, I had at the time I had a full-time job with clients predominantly in the defense sector. Couldn't share any of my coolest work samples because they were classified as controlled goods. I wasn't able to share any of my professional work at the time, and I felt really defeated. I'd worked for an organization for over 5 years. I couldn't take any of my best work to show in a portfolio. So here's a bit of a segue. When you don't have a portfolio, some prospective employers may ask you to complete a work sample. So there is a time and a place for this. Drafting work samples is giving away your time for free because you often don't get paid to build them out. However, if you're all right with losing some time for the cause, go ahead. Or if it's for, say, a nonprofit, that's another great way of doing work samples and kind of negotiating, okay, well, I'll do this pro bono if I can put this in my portfolio. So if you're okay with losing some time for the cause, go ahead, but being proactive and creating a portfolio will really save you this hassle. If you do find yourself in the situation of building out a sample, make sure you ask the prospective employer if you can use the sample or a sanitized version in your portfolio, because if you're doing the work for free, it really should work for you somehow. So segue ended. After I wallowed around for a little bit and thought about like, oh, when am I going to have time for this? I eked out some downtime. I got serious and I created my first two samples. They are these two samples here, which are hideous. They're so bad. I apparently was really in this like rounded rectangle, like pattern background phase. I don't know what I was thinking. But anyhow, these these are my two really horrible portfolio pieces. So
That's a good confession.
yeah, the total honesty here. So the first one, the one here on the left, was a tabbed interaction with pop-ups designed to teach you how to bathe a cat. I didn't know how to bathe a cat, but WikiHow really came through with some hilarious illustrations, and that tabbed interaction is somehow still a hit with people that come to my site. The second was inspired by many of the small business books that I had read. I wanted to share brief reviews, so I created this hotspot interaction that linked to book reviews. So both samples, very basic in terms of technological prowess. They were both created in Storyline, and they were the launching pad for my portfolio. So when you're feeling defeated, really just challenge yourself to be creative. I will also say that these two samples are still in my portfolio, and the reason I have them there is because I also view building a portfolio as a way for me to reflect on my growth as a developer. So they are still there. They are my humble beginnings, and maybe one day I will remove them, but I have not gotten to that point just yet.
That's awesome. So we have a comment from Elizabeth says, I've done almost all my work with government customers who did not want content share. It has drastically limited my ability to have a portfolio in interviews where I showed a few screenshots. It felt flat. They were not impressed. Yeah, I can agree with that. You know, when you, especially if you create a portfolio and you just have a static image, yeah, it may show some of your design, but I mean, it's not really, it should be interactive, right?
Yeah. So another thing is, and we'll kind of see this, and it'll answer Lisa Ann's question as well
Right.
about how did I improve my skills on Storyline. Is that you really, if you're going to go into an interview, you know that the screenshots and descriptions have kind of fell flat from an interview perspective, then you need to create more of a challenge for yourself. So give me a couple of slides. I will show you how to get those prompts. And yes, absolutely, Ricardo. I would definitely welcome that. At the very end of this session, there's going to be my contact information, so you can shoot me your portfolio as a PDF, and I will gratefully provide some feedback.
No, that's nice. Thanks.
You're very welcome. So another thing when we think about challenges is always the I'm not legally allowed to share. So every time that I discuss e-learning portfolios, we always have participants asking about sharing work that isn't legally allowed to be shared. So what I recommend to individuals experiencing a similar problem is to sanitize your sample. As you can see in the example provided, a little bit of a crude example, but sanitizing a work sample doesn't have to be a huge undertaking. In this case, I removed the logo, I changed the background and theme colors. The content for this organization is readily available online, so it's not considered controlled goods. Therefore, I was able to keep all of the existing text. But for those of you who are restricted by branding and text content, I would suggest removing all branding and replace text content with dummy text. And that's as easy as it has to be for sanitizing your sample. People don't have rights to tabbed interactions or hotspot interactions or drag and drops. Though it's kind of like everyone's creativity is almost what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that everybody is inspired by various things, and no one has copyright of that type of intellectual property. I could create something very similar to this Qubit IBM menu, but it doesn't have to be, I may have never seen this interaction before, and it just may have been something that I came up with out of my own brain. So back to the tabbed interaction of how to bathe a cat, that interaction, these tabs were very similar in look and feel to one of our military tabbed interactions. It had similar styling where we had like the underline underneath of the header and then the text content, and we had a similar pop-up style, but I just replaced the content and redesigned the interaction to be my own. So when you're kind of thinking about, well, how can I share that? Take concepts from those interactions that you've created for your company that you're not legally allowed to share the content of, and make it your own. Find a way to make it a bit more unique to you. The third challenge is, a lot of folks say, but I'm an instructional designer, so I have nothing to share. So what? You're an instructional designer. That is fantastic, but it doesn't mean that because you're not an e-learning developer, you have nothing to put in your portfolio. I think that there is a very big misconception about not having anything to share in a portfolio when your role is less visual than that of e-learning developers. There are a ton of things that you can share. Portfolios aren't limited to e-learning samples. As an instructional designer, you likely create needs assessments, course development plans, or storyboards. These are all things you can include within your portfolio. Not only are these elements interesting to prospective employers, it's interesting to other people who are working within the same role. One of my most popular screencasts is a time-lapse demo of me populating a storyboard in Microsoft Word. And I'm pretty sure I used copywritten music. I think it's Pharrell's Happy that I am doing it to. So I probably should take it down at this point. But I thought it was boring. Other people really enjoyed it. So there are individuals who have built their entire brand on their process documentation for things like scenario and branching design. So what doesn't seem exciting to one person really is fascinating to another.
I know, but now we gotta argue. Were people really watching you or listening to the song?
To Pharrell? we don't know.
Yeah, we don't know.
So let's see.
But that's a great point because, you know, a lot of people get caught up with the instructional design piece and being like, oh, you know, I don't do technology. So I was like, well,
you really do.
And your work has to be done somehow, right?
Exactly. And I find, from an instructional design perspective, I find seeing how other people are doing their processes very interesting, because I'm always looking for ways of how I can improve upon my own. So, for example, the first image here is a course development plan that I used with faculty members at the university. I would have faculty members sit down with me and say things like, oh, I'm a fantastic lecturer, but I was told I have to put this course online. None of my activities will work online. And so I would take them through this document of identifying their learning objectives and fleshing out all of their module information and creating their assessment strategy. And I had face-to-face faculty members who found this helpful for them, not just from an online development perspective, but for working within their own day-to-day building out lesson plans. So I was able to help them improve their face-to-face process. So it's one of those things that I think people really get kind of stuck when they're thinking about, like, well, what can I share? I don't do graphics. I don't do e-learning. There's always something that you can share in your portfolio.
Right. So we have a comment from Rebecca saying that you can also do a short write-up of an ID project you did in a creative way via infograph or Canva. Yep. And for those of you that don't know, Canva is a design tool, not the LMS Canvas, but an actual graphic design tool that is taking the world by storm, making it really easy for people to make some good looking
Yeah.
stuff. Lisa Ann is saying, what if you're coming from a different field? How can you incorporate samples of from your work so it looks more in line with what an ID samples would look like or should look like? And this is knowing Lisa Ann that she's coming from a teaching background. So
Yeah, so I mean, from a teaching perspective, you've probably developed lesson plans, you've probably done assessment mapping. I would share that type of content because it's very similar to something like a course development plan or a needs assessment, or an assessment strategy from an instructional design perspective. So I feel like there's a ton of stuff that you could share from a teaching perspective. If you were coming from another field outside of the world of education, I would explore, I would, I guess, implore you to think about good training experiences that you had, and how you can maybe create a sample based on those training experiences. For example, my reason for wanting to go into instructional design actually was I was interested in technical writing because of a really poorly written IKEA manual that incited a lot of arguments when my husband and I were putting together a desk. So I thought, surely there is a better job aid or training method than this.
that will do it.
You really need to just kind of make something your muse and kind of run with it.
Awesome.
All right, so building your portfolio doesn't need to be a challenge. You just need to find some motivation and summon your creativity. So back to that original question about how did I improve my storyline skills, and what was the other question? There's one above that. Maybe the non-disclosure one.
Yeah, the skills. You mean
government.
The government, right?
Yeah. So when you're limited by what you can share, going to a place like the Articulate e-learning Heroes community, for example, is a fantastic way of jumpstarting your motivation. And for me, it really was huge when it came to kickstarting my motivation, because half the battle is your own imagination and creativity. So the challenges that David Anderson does, weekly or bi-weekly now, I'm not quite sure, but he does them regularly.
Yeah,
they were
still
fantastic.
weekly.
Each week there would be a new challenge and a prompt for submission, and each week I would be blown away by the entries. So this community is a very supportive environment. Comments tend to be positive or constructive in nature. And the weekly challenges were really a great way of seeing what my peers were capable of doing and getting ideas for how I could apply similar approaches to future projects. My portfolio has grown considerably since I began participating in the weekly e-learning challenges. And the greatest praise that I have for them is just that. It challenged me to think outside the box and create interactions that I may not have previously considered creating. If you haven't done so already, you should head on over to the community and at least check out the challenges, because it's a good way of getting started in your portfolio building journey. Now, I'm just gonna, let's see here if I can, how do I exit out of this? Let's end the show for a second. I will go, let's see here. Oh, we got Black Friday Furniture Haul.
Special. This is a special section of the.
Yeah, I think I actually opened up my wrong one. Let's see here.
Yeah, and I was gonna add to that, since we're talking about portfolios, you don't have to be limited to thinking. I mean, obviously the expertise that Ashley is bringing is e-learning and instructional design, but you don't have to be limited in thinking that you don't need a portfolio because you're a trainer or you are a facilitator or speaker or anything like that. I would think that if you can record what best proof of your capabilities as a facilitator is to show a short video of
you facilitating.
So,
yeah.
I mean, this is something that can, it's a very simple thing to do. I shared recently in one of the workshops to create a portfolio site. and then to be able to then upload videos on YouTube and bring them in and essentially just showcase your skills. So, I always say when you're trying to get a job, this can give you the edge.
Absolutely. No, I definitely agree. And that goes back to, from a teaching perspective, I mean, you've been teaching, so why don't you record yourself doing a mock teaching, or almost like a mini teach. And it doesn't have to be with, let's say, your students. It could be with a group of individuals that you kind of stage and then show them something new. I know when I was working at the college, we had to do this. It was kind of silly because we all had graduate degrees. So we had our bachelor's, we had our graduate degrees, and then we went to work at the college. And every employee at the college is required to do a 2-year diploma. And so because I was in education, I had to do teaching and learning. And so we had to do these mini teach exercises where we were being recorded teaching a group of people to do something. And so I have one of me teaching a class full of people how to put a duvet in a duvet cover. So it really doesn't have to be anything specific. So
Right.
I just wanted to quickly show you how you can access the eLearning Heroes challenges. So if you go on to community.articulate.com, under Learn, I think it's Learn. Yes, there's.
We have a question from this end saying, if you don't have access to Storyline, can you create something similar in PowerPoint?
PowerPoint or Adobe Captivate or anything that you want to develop in.
Right.
But the challenge is, and I really kind of pitch them not from a storyline development perspective, but more so just from a portfolio building perspective.
Right.
Because as you'll see here, when you click into e-learning challenges, you can, let me see. I like to click into one. Oh, there's a complete list. Sorry. Here's the complete list. I like to look at the complete list, and there's all of these prompts. So we've got gate screens, flattening up your course design skills, like all the way down to the 200s now.
Yeah, I always share something with people that's kind of interesting. Go to 58.
Let's see.
Not 258, but 58.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That
right.
was so long ago. Okay.
I'll take you up there, yeah.
Yes. So my actual slide is the digital
right.
one.
Well, no, the reason I share this one is because this is the first e-learning challenge I ever did. So.
Yeah. So I mean,
first time challenger Alexander on the recap.
Oh,
Yeah, you go. See,
so long ago.
And that was a horrible design.
No. And oh yes, I mean yes, my next slide is the digital magazine template. So let me go back to that for you. So I definitely encourage you to go check out the Articulate eLearning Heroes community, because even if you're not doing storyline development, it really is great to just give you a prompt and some examples to kind of kickstart your motivation and your creativity. So inspiration comes in many forms. So a few examples of that include digital magazines, templates, video games, design websites. You really just need to make something your muse and run with it. One of the eLearning Heroes challenges that we just showed you was about creating your own digital magazine template, which were creations inspired by existing digital magazines and the elements that they consist of. So with a little imagination, I was able to bring together my own digital magazine, The Meadows. Let go of fear. So fear will only hold you back, and we all really need to just let it go. You have nothing to lose. If you would have told me 7 years ago that I would be speaking in front of groups of people, many of whom I very much respect and idolize, I would have told you that you were out of your damn mind, because I was the kid in university who would take zeros whenever an oral presentation was required. I am slowly conquering that fear. When I first started building out my portfolio and participating in challenges, I was terrified to share my work. In an industry with so many talented people, what authority was I to subject folks to looking at my work? But once I began to let go of that fear, I was able to share my work, grow my portfolio, and grow as an e-learning professional. Without being able to let go of fear, I would never have previously considered sharing silly interactions and glimpses into my ridiculous mind. Case in point here, this is Artie. Artie and his story of single parenthood was something that I came up with and spent hours laboring over a meticulous budget of kibble and a gift-giving game for him. At times I felt like I was going crazy, but the finished product made people laugh and it was very well received. So your harshest critic will always be you, and we all need to get over ourselves if we want to be successful industry professionals. Show yourself off. In the same vein of letting go of fear, you should put yourself out there. Most of us feel imposter syndrome, and when you've worked on a project for so long, you may no longer see the forest through the trees. But there are a world of people who might feel differently about the cool things that you're doing than you do. So if you've worked on a really cool project, submitting it to some sort of showcase like the eLearning Guild's Demo Fest, which they do at Learning Solutions and at DevLearn. I'm not sure if they do it at Realities. You've been there, right, Alex?
Realities, yeah, I've been there. I don't remember them doing anything
Demo Fest.
Yeah.
So they do it at DevLearn and Learning Solutions, but they're really a great way to bring your project to a massive audience, and in doing so will help you build your confidence in the hard work that you've been putting forth. Even if you aren't submitting your projects for awards, you can always share out loud in like-minded communities, such as via your website, over on LinkedIn, or on Twitter. These are my humble brags. I did Best Academic Solution at DevLearn a couple of years ago for a group counseling simulation for Algonquin College out of Ottawa. And there's a video demo of that on my portfolio. And then Best Video Solution with Treliant, which is the company I currently work for, where we create binge-worthy Netflix-style compliance training. So I bet, shout out in the chat if any of you have ever heard anyone say binge-worthy compliance training before, because I'm fairly certain it's not something people say.
Yeah, so like Netflix and John.
For some, building out your portfolio might seem like a daunting task, and it doesn't need to be difficult. You can post samples to places like Dribbble or in the eLearning Heroes community. You can post it on places like Pinterest, for example. That's a free site that I feel like I've seen people using as a portfolio launchpad. I love sharing knowledge with others, so I incorporate my portfolio into my blog, which just hit 1 million visitors for the year last week. So I'm very excited about that, and that'll come up again momentarily. But occasionally I do some work posts, like show my work posts, and I have a portfolio section of my website that contains a very simple WordPress plugin. Once we're done with this session, I'll pop out, I'll show you, or maybe after this slide actually, I'll show you how I quickly upload portfolio pieces. But it's important to invest in yourself. If you don't have the time or expertise to easily add portfolio pieces to your website, pay someone who does have the expertise. For example, I spent about 5 hours of my time trying to figure out this WordPress plugin. I finally conceded to paying someone to do it for me and explain to me how to do it. It took them about a half an hour, and it only cost $30. So when I multiply my 5 hours by my hourly rate, I spent a lot, I wasted a lot of time and money there. My current portfolio isn't very fancy, but it does exactly what it needs to do. Clients don't want to see 50 full courses before deciding that they like your work, but they do need to see some representation of your capabilities within the world of e-learning or instructional design. Every client's different, so it's important to consider a varied approach to your portfolio. And what I mean by this is to include a representative sample of pieces. some work samples, some personal samples, maybe some visual design or graphic samples if that's something that you're good at. The prospective clients need to believe from your portfolio or discussions with you that you're the right person for the job. Another important thing to note here is that when you're trying to think about which samples you want to share, be strategic. Don't include content that you wouldn't want to work on again in the future. The type of content that you include is the type of content you will likely receive inquiries over. So, for example, I don't enjoy working in Adobe Captivate. It takes me a lot longer than it does to develop in Storyline. So in my portfolio, you will not find any Adobe Captivate samples, because when I had Captivate samples in there, I was getting inquiries to do more Captivate work. I didn't want to do that. So once you have your portfolio built, promote yourself. I do this via my website, eLearning Heroes community, LinkedIn, Twitter. Don't be selfish. Promote what your colleagues are also doing, because they're likely to promote you when you're doing cool things. And that's kind of how referrals happen. So if you're looking at getting into freelancing or working from a contracting perspective, referrals are super important. So let's hop out of here again. And I will go back into my website and show you how I very quickly add things to my portfolio. So this is my website. It is self-hosted on WordPress. This is my portfolio. I like it because it's kind of got these little thumbnails, and then there's an overlay with a description. And when you click in, it opens up as almost like a light box. So I was able to put my description in here. I've got my video embedded. Other pieces have just some screenshots and an explanation of what I did. So it's pretty simple. It's called Media Grid. So if you add a plugin, so go into your plugins, you add new, and you go find Media Grid. Once you have that installed, all you have to do is select Add New Item, put a title, put in your description and your content, so embed your video, and then you can choose to categorize it if you want. But then the magic thing that you have to do is add a featured image, which is just really what's going to be your thumbnail. Once you have that feature image added, you can publish. And then when you go to build your grid, you go into Grid Builder. So I have I have Portfolio, Screencasts, and Screencast More. If you want to create a new one, you just type in a new grid name and add it. It'll show up in your list. And then you choose whichever one you want to add the piece to. And then you go to select an item. So I want portfolio or professional. And then you just go find your portfolio piece that you added when you were adding the new item. You select add, and it shows up in this grid. And all you have to do is click Save Grid, and it will populate into your portfolio.
Actually, I know there are various flavors of WordPress. I'm a WordPress user myself. Mm-hmm. It looks like you have your own URL, actually, at chiasson.com. So do you use WordPress through ISP provider, internet service provider?
Yes, so I use WordPress self-hosted. Okay. WordPress.org, I believe.
Yes, WordPress.org. Okay. So there's another flavor of this, guys. It's called WordPress.com, and that's more of a blog-based version of WordPress that it requires less of the work that she is doing, but it doesn't give you all the capabilities that she's showing here.
Yes, you can add plugins to the WordPress.
Exactly. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good to know. It's good to know that, so folks, are not don't get too confused,
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's very easy to use once you're getting here. Yeah.
Yes. And another great, somebody brought up recently when I was doing this session, another great site for portfolios is Wix, because it's very economical. You kind of get your own domain of sorts, and everything with Wix is very much drag and drop. So it's very intuitive. They built it with the user in mind. So Wix might be a good way of showing your portfolio as well.
Yeah, I actually add one for you that might help you going forward too, is Google Sites.
Yeah.
That's
Google Sites. You could do like Office 365 has Sway. You could do a Sway presentation, any of that. So let me see here. We'll get back to the portfolio. So I told you that the million visitors was going to come back up again. So it seems kind of meta to have training for training on a tool for training, but it's necessary and it doesn't need to be difficult. So I have authored 2 books, Articulate Storyline Essentials and Mastering Articulate Storyline, both for Storyline 2, but many of the concepts discussed are still very relevant. They're both on Amazon.com. And then Sprout eLearning houses self-paced courses. Build Your eLearning Portfolio is there for free, as well as a 60+ lesson course on Introduction to Instructional Design, which right now, if you use the code MILLION, it's 80% off. So instead of $495, it's $99. And yeah, thank you for kind of having me out here. I'm always willing to connect with folks through my website or via Twitter, ashleychiasson.com. I've got over 100 Articulate Storyline screencast tutorials on there for free. So feel free to check those out if you're interested in learning more about Storyline. And my Twitter handle is AMD So let's see.
Awesome stuff. Guys, any questions, please pop in the chat or unmute yourself. Some of you may not be able to unmute yourselves because I have a report that you may be using an older version of Zoom at this point. So make sure you update that for the next webinars. But if you can unmute yourself, go ahead and do that and ask the question or use the chat. Any questions? Going once, going twice. All right, here we go. We had a great information. Thank you so much for sharing. We got some comments here. Would I be able to connect with you privately on LinkedIn?
Absolutely. Let me grab my LinkedIn.
Got a thank you very much from Elizabeth. Awesome. Guys, also, I'm going to drop with you a survey, as always, our 2-question survey form, so you can let us know, especially let us know if you want Ashley to do a local event for us. She's coming for Learning Solutions. So, you know, I've been trying, I'm not pushing hard, I'm just saying.
Yeah, well, there's some flexibility on the before Learning Solutions.
There you go. There you go. That's what we're talking about. And
yeah, afterwards I've got some guests coming to stay with us. So
nice.
I can't stay late.
Yes. And so, yeah, make sure you grab her links there and get together. But I just dropped the link there for Typeform. It's our survey tool. Just 2 questions really and your comments. And that let us know how you like this webinar. And, you know, if we need to have more Chiasson to our live. So, Ashley, so good things there. A lot of folks are, you know, may have a bit of a challenge with some technologies. Like I know, you know, in the beginning when I did my WordPress self-hosted, you know, it was I had a little bit of knowledge of web design, but it was a little bit of a step. And I found it through YouTube actually to kind of, you know, get something installed. So I got my ISP is HostGator, for example. So the way in the workflow for you guys, you know, and I think it's for you too. Which one are you using? Which one is your host?
I believe I'm using GoDaddy.
GoDaddy, okay.
GoDaddy.
So companies like GoDaddy, guys, and you know, GoDaddy or HostGator, or I think WordPress also loves. If you go to those links that I gave you, WordPress.org or WordPress.com, they do have like a preferred host. So I think it's one called Blue Group or Blue something.
Bluehost, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. So yeah, check that out because ideally, the way that she has it and the way I do it as well for starlearn.com is it gives you a lot of power. You can store a bunch of files as well. So it's a very good way to get your tech skills up and your portfolio going. So
yeah, and for me, it was always the blog was always kind of the important thing for me.
I know,
I
right?
mean, I started my site more for I'm an independent. I should have a way for clients to. It was more a business channel for me, and then I very quickly found out when I was starting to blog that my audience was predominantly instructional designers or e-learning developers. So it wasn't necessarily my clients that were reading the content.
Right.
So right now my website does two things. It has my contact and portfolio so that clients can contact me, but then it also still has the functionality for my blog so that I can still connect with instructional designers and
Yeah,
e-learning.
it's the same story. I mean, I started with the blog, just blogging, right? I'm going to create my own blog, and and then you can, as you grow, you turn into something else. Um, in terms of what do you find, and guys, please drop questions. This is your opportunity to get this one-on-one with Ashley. So give us a questions on the chat. Make sure you put all panelists and attendees when you respond, and I'll be looking for your question. And in the meantime, just wanted to ask you, so what do you find that's more effective in terms of when you do your portfolio? Is it a thing where you're showing how the work is done, or something more interactive where you do an actual sample that is interactive in Storyline?
The interactive ones I will say are more accessed from the back end when I see the reporting. They're more accessed, followed quickly by the screencasts, because the screencasts really give you an opportunity to demo what you're doing and talk through it instead of just having the visual and the text description.
Yeah.
So I think at a minimum, if you're able to get a video demo up there, that would be great. But it's one of those things that it's tough to. I understand that it's hard to get people to agree to that when it comes to sharing their content. So you often get the screenshot and the description.
That's awesome. Well, look, this has been, again, an amazing opportunity, and so happy that we got to record it. So thank you so much, Ashley, for joining us again. Guys, please click on the survey and respond so we know exactly which speakers you want to see again and you want to learn more from. And remember, in March, she'll be here in Orlando for Learning Solutions. So we'll definitely look forward to see if we can make some magic happen.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, like I say, thank you all for showing up. Thank you for the second installment here of the e-learning week, employee learning week. I always call it e-learning, I don't know why, but employee learning week. And don't forget, Friday morning, we do have an awesome episode with Niels Floor on learning experience design. So for all of that, enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you in the next one.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.